Good morning and welcome to a special service today. We gather every Sunday because we serve a resurrected King. Jesus was resurrected on a Sunday, and that's why the church gathers on a Sunday. But today is an extra special Sunday because it's Mother's Day, and we celebrate the gift that mothers are to us in our lives. For those who do not know me, my name is Luis Keepers, and I'm the lead pastor here at Grace Church. And today we are wrapping up a series that we've been busy with now for a couple of weeks called Is This Recyclable? Is this recyclable? Have you ever been at a point in your life where it feels like things have fallen apart so badly that you don't know how to fix it? Whether it's the decisions that you've made that got you to that point, or whether it's external circumstances that happens to you. Like at some point, we all get to that place in our lives where we just thought we would never get to. We get to this place where we're depressed, where we're grieving, where we're stuck. And maybe today, on this Mother's Day, it's because you want to be a mom and that hasn't happened yet. Or maybe it is because something in your finances have gone completely south, or a relationship has fallen apart. Whatever it might be, I think we all get to that place in our lives where we are left wondering, is this the end of the story? And today, for this final part of this series, our topic is from endings to new beginnings. Because I believe that the God of the Bible, the God that I serve, is a God that can take anything, even if it seems at the end of its life, if it's trash, if it's wasted, if there's nothing left. I serve a God who turns things that are wasteful, that the world views as at the end, and He recycles it into something beautiful. And we've been busy looking at the life of a man named Samson in the Bible. So if you haven't been here, you can catch up online. But Samson was what the Bible calls a judge. So he lived in the time between Moses and then Joshua led the Israelites out of Egypt, and the time when the Israelites got their first king. He lived in that period of time, 300 to 400 years in that gap, and he was called a judge. So a leader that God raised up temporarily to save His people from some enemy that they faced. In this case, it was the Philistines. And Samson, he kind of did his own thing. But if you were here last week, he finally gets to this point. There was this vow on his life. God said that He would bless him, that He would give him supernatural strength to save the Israelites. But he had to fulfill the Nazarene vows, and he just kept up messing it up. Finally, he gets this lady that he loves, and Delilah, and he tells her his secret, and she gets the Philistines to cut off his hair. And Samson loses his power. They gouge out his eyes. And the man that burned down the grain of the Philistines is now in prison behind the grinding wheel, grinding their grain. That sounds like the end of the story. But it gets even worse. Okay, just when you think it cannot go lower. Let's read from Judges 16. This is the end and kind of like a new beginning of Samson's story. Judges 16, verse 23. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate, saying, "Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands." When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, "Our God has delivered our enemy into our hands, the one who laid waste to our land and multiplied our slain." While they were in high spirits, they shouted, "Bring out Samson to entertain us." So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. When they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to his servant who held his hand, "Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean against them." Remember, he cannot see. His eyes are gone. Now the temple was crowded with men and women, and all the rulers of the Philistines were there. And on the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then Samson reached towards the central pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against it, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus, he killed many more when he died than while he lived. If you read this account of his life and you stop at verse 25, 26, where he's entertaining the Philistines, this seems like the end. The Philistines are gathering in the temple of a god that they carved out of materials that you find on this earth. And they are boasting, and they're like, look at how great our God is. Here's Samson, the one who was raised up by the Israelites' God to save them, and we captured him. And not only did we capture him, he's now like the court jester. He's like a clown, like entertaining them for pleasure. This is like the lowest point you could go. It seems like not only Samson, but almost like God has been defeated by the enemies of the Israelites. This seems like the end. And I wonder if you would have stopped at verse 25, what about God's promise? What about the promise that God made to Samson's mother and father when he said, like, I will use Samson to free my people from their oppressors? I wonder what Samson was feeling. Like, can you imagine this man that could pick up a jawbone of a donkey and kill 1,000 men? This man that was so incredibly strong, that just did what he wanted, when he wanted, and now he's at this place lower than where he ever thought he would be. Right? He lost the love of his life. He didn't just lose the love of his life betrayed him. And not just that it happened once, it happened twice. The first time he married a Philistine woman, she betrayed him to the Philistines when they asked, what is the answer to his riddle? Then he left her, he came back for her later. Her dad gave her to another man, so he gets angry, so he burns down the Philistines' grain, and then the Philistines burned her. That was the first time. Second time, he meets Delilah. And she's like, Samson, tell me the secret to your strength. And he lies to her a couple of times. And each time she betrays his trust, and she tells the Philistines, and he wakes up bound the way that he told her he has to be bound to lose his strength. Of course, it didn't work. But then finally he tells her the true strength, because she tells him, you do not love me unless you tell me this. And he tells her, and they capture him and gouge out his eyes. Talk about broken relationships. Right? Not only that, but now Samson has lost the strength that made him the man that he thought he was. He lost his sight. He lost his freedom. Not only did he lose all of that, but on top of it, people are making fun of him. Kicking a lying dog, right? Like just making fun of a man who's at the end of it, who's lost everything. And not only are they making fun of him, I don't think at this point he feels like he's got any honor left. But the worst thing for me in this is, at that point, if you would stop at verse 25 or 26, it seems as if Samson has lost his life purpose. God made him with a purpose. God told him what the purpose was, told his parents what the purpose was, and now he's in jail. No more purpose of freeing the Israelites. And maybe you feel like that. Maybe today you're sitting here and you're facing one of these issues, or you have lost a loved one, or you've been betrayed by someone that was close to you. Perhaps you have lost the things that you thought made you the person that you were. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your money or your position at work. Perhaps you're at a place now where you feel like the world is just moving on. They're just making fun of you because everyone is moving on while you are stuck in a hole. Perhaps you feel like Samson, like there's just no honor or respect left. You just have nothing left anymore. Perhaps you're sitting here today and you're at such a low point that you feel like your life doesn't even have a purpose anymore. And in those moments, the question is, what do we feel and what do we do when we feel like we're at the end of it? I wonder what Samson would have done. And here's a couple of things that we often do when it feels to us like we've reached the end of something. Maybe the first response of Samson was fighting with God. Maybe Samson prayed and he said, God, how could you allow this to happen to me? You made a promise. I'm not supposed to be bound up and without sight. Maybe you've been at that place where you fought with God and you're like, God, how could you allow this thing to happen in my life? You're supposed to protect me. Like, this shouldn't happen to me. Another option might be to feel sorry for yourself. Maybe Samson felt sorry for himself, believing that he doesn't deserve to be captured by the enemies of God. Maybe you feel whatever suffering or hardship you're facing that you do not deserve it. Maybe he scolded himself for messing up. Okay, like, Samson, how could you be so stupid? Like, Delilah kept betraying you. How could you keep going back to her and telling her your secret? Maybe you're scolding yourself because you messed up financially so many times and now there's nothing left in your bank account. Maybe you're scolding yourself because you know you didn't parent the way God called you and now you're facing a challenge with your child. Or you didn't put the love and the care into your marriage and now your marriage is at its end. Perhaps you're feeling frustrated and angry with yourself for where you are in life. But ultimately, I think the thing that people feel the deepest when you reach the end of yourself is a sense of hopelessness. A sense that there is no way out of this. But I want to tell you today that there is a very big difference between having no strength left and having no hope left. And no matter who you are, all of us will get to a place in our life where we have no strength left. If you've never been there, I'm thankful, but it's going to happen at some point. We heard it a couple of weeks ago where the prophet said, like, all men, young men, strong men stumble and fall and gets tired and weary. You get to a place of no strength left, maybe because of something you chose to do that got you in a hole. You might have gotten to a place where you have no strength left because stuff that has happened to you from the outside that you didn't have control over. That will happen. But the second thing, having no hope left, I do not believe we ever need to get to that place. You see, and the way that we don't get to a place of hopelessness is by making sure that our hope is anchored in the right thing. The Philistines anchored their hope in a God that the psalmist says is carved out of wood or stone, a God that has no eyes to see, no mouth to speak, no ears to hear, no hands to do anything. And worse than that, this God, Dagon of theirs, it was a conditional relationship. They had to do something, and they had to bribe him in ways in order to get something back from him. And it is interesting that in most world religions, and if you say, Louis, I'm not religious, I don't believe in anything, so don't have that. All people believe in something, even atheists. We all have to anchor our hope in something. Because we cannot anchor it in ourselves. If we could anchor it in ourselves, if we were enough, then our world wouldn't have had problems. We would have solved it all. Your life would have never had a problem because you could just solve it yourself. So somehow, every single person on this earth, we anchor our hope in something beyond ourselves. Whether that's science, whether that is horoscopes, whether that's tarot cards or stones or crystals or other gods. The problem is that most of the world religions have this in common. We have to somehow do something to prove that we deserve for whatever we put our hope in to bless us. Even if it's karma you believe in. I have to do good in order to receive good. If I do bad, I'm going to receive bad. The God of the Bible is very different. He doesn't need manipulation. He doesn't need conditions. We read from Old Testament to New Testament the story of a God who is full of grace, who is faithful even to those who are unfaithful to Him. And when you anchor your hope in a God who is faithful even when we don't deserve it, then there's no reason for hope to run out. And maybe today you're sitting here and you're like, Louis, but I am a Christian and I have put my hope in Jesus. Still, I feel like I have no hope left. Then let me tell you, maybe it's not because you don't have Jesus in your life, but perhaps it is because you have lost sight of who He is and what He can do in your life. There is always hope in God, no matter the circumstances. You may lose strength in this life, but you do not have to lose hope. And we have seen that story play out over and over and over again in our church with people who got to the end of themselves, people who ran out of strength and put their trust in Jesus, and hope returned to them. And slowly that hope turned into fruit in their life. And some of them are sitting here today, and you've heard their testimonies with baptisms. But you do not need to lose hope if you anchor your hope in someone who is beyond our time and space, in someone who's bigger than the problems we face, who's stronger than the challenges that's in front of us. And this is exactly what happens with Samson. This is where everything changes for Samson. What we just read today, we read a prayer of Samson. This is only the second time in the whole story of Samson that we read about in the Bible that he actually prays. This was a moment where everything changed for Samson. He always assumed he would just be strong. He assumed that it's just something that will be part of his life, that it was a promise that was made. He will always be strong. Now suddenly he's blind, he's weak, he's a prisoner. And then he cries out, and this is not a prayer like last time where he was arrogant and demanded stuff from God. This is a prayer, he's been humiliated into the dust. And out of that place of humility, he reached out to God and he prays this. He doesn't say, God, solve my problems. He doesn't ask God to give him his sight back. He starts, God, remember me. That is a prayer of saying, God, I need your attention. I just want a relationship with the one who made me, the one who can give me purpose, the one who fills me with hope and who can get me through this. I just desire relationship. He doesn't demand stuff from God anymore, but he asks God, remember me. See, Samson's real weakness was that he believed he was blessed because of something great and deserving in himself. And it is so hard for us, I think, in life, especially if you're an A-type personality, if you're an overachiever, if you're a fixer, it is so hard to remember that what we do, we only do because of God's grace. And that God's grace is given so that what we do is pleasing to God. And you might be like, I'm not a Christian. I'm not doing anything by God's grace. You know what the Bible tells us about you, if you're not a Christian, is that God's common grace is still upon you. It reigns over those who follow God and who do not follow God. God has common grace that he pours out over everyone. And he's got a special grace that he pours out over his children, a promise that he made. But he pours out his grace over all of us. And it is by his grace that we live and breathe and have our being. Samson finally understood that it's not his strength, that he's not so great. And he took the necessary steps back to God, back to his purpose. He stops blaming others. He stops pretending that he can fix it himself, and he says, God, remember me. And that's another challenge I think that we face, is we are blame shifters by nature. When something really goes wrong, when we reach the end of ourselves, we tend to shift blame to others. God, it's Delilah's fault. God, it is the Philistines' fault. It's not mine. And we can be so good at blame shifting. But it takes strength to acknowledge mistakes I've made. It takes strength to acknowledge that I've run out of strength. And turn to God. Our turnaround from whatever you're facing in life that you feel you have no strength left to face it. Your turnaround begins when your self-reliance ends. And when you turn back to God. Samson had nothing left to give anymore. He had no way out. And he turns back to God and he says, God, remember me. And that simple prayer is a prayer of repentance and a prayer that leads to restored relationship and restored purpose. And you know, there's someone in the Bible who prayed that same prayer. God, remember me. It was a man who was hanging on a cross next to Jesus. A man who was also, just like Samson, guilty. A man who messed up. He was on a cross probably because he committed murder or a terrible thing in the Roman Empire. crucifixion was reserved for people who committed the most serious crimes. And Jesus, who was innocent, is hanging on this cross and everyone is mocking Jesus. And this man looks at Jesus and he cries out and he says, Jesus, remember me. He's at the end of himself. And all that he knew is that the hope is anchored in having a relationship with God. Not in doing the right stuff, not in performing in a certain way. No arrogance, no demands, no excuses, just a pure broken heart seeking a new relationship with the God who created him and the God who can save him. And God uses this moment when Samson is at his lowest for the ultimate purpose. You see, God's purpose was never just to save the Israelites from their local enemies, from the Philistines. They faced many enemies over thousands of years. But ultimately, God's purpose was to save them from idolatry, from idols in their own lives. They got so intertwined with the Philistines that at this point, they are worshiping other gods with them. They have lost track of who God is. And if you're saying, like, I don't have idols in my life. I don't pray to little statues. Listen, idols are not just statues or stones or rocks or whatever it might be. An idol is anything good in life that you elevate to the ultimate and highest position. The only one who's supposed to sit on the throne of our lives in the highest position is King Jesus. And ultimately, God's purpose was to save them, not just from the Philistines, but from their idols. And in this moment, Samson is also saved from the idols in his life, the idols of his pride and his arrogance. God strengthened Samson again. And although Samson broke the rules, although he lived selfishly, although he was so full of pride, just constantly messing up over and over, God strengthens him again simply because Samson turned back. I think this is something that you can so easily miss. The God of the Bible is a seeking God. He doesn't wait for you to one day just wake up and realize that he's out there. The Bible tells us that he's seeking. Jesus shared a parable of how a shepherd will leave 99 sheep to find one that is lost, and he's pointing to us. We have a God that keeps fighting for us, even in our lowest moments, even in our most broken moments. He comes after us, and he never gives up. And God didn't restore Samson because Samson was perfect. God didn't restore Samson because he deserved it. In his mess, in his brokenness, God restored him because God is gracious. And God restores us, me and you, not because we deserve it, not because we are so good, not because we did everything right, but simply because he's gracious. You know what the beauty of grace is? If grace depended on deserving it, it wouldn't be grace. Any strength that you've lost, any strength that you lack, can be recovered by grace. And what is so beautiful to me here is that not only is Samson's physical strength renewed, but Samson's purpose is restored. We read at the end of his life story that when that temple fell, in that moment, more of the Philistines died than in all of the rest of his life. And the ultimate purpose to save the Israelites from their oppressors, he lived that purpose out. And so his death becomes the most important moment of his life. The most faithful event of his life is the manner of his death. You know what is so beautiful to me? Our lowest point in life, where we feel like we're a prisoner pushing a grinding wheel and we don't see any way out, is often where the greatness of God's power and glory is reflected the most. David Jackman writes about Samson. He says, the Samson narrative begins with a strong man who's revealed to be weak. He was never actually that strong. But it ends with a weak man who is stronger than he ever was before. And becoming and living as a Christian, This is what it is about. It is becoming weak so that we can be strong. It is about acknowledging that I cannot fix it. It's about acknowledging that I'm at the end of my strength and the line. It's acknowledging that I don't see a way forward and that I need God. And it's in those moments that His glory and His power shines the brightest. It is those stories that we celebrate over and over again because we see God at work. It's when we are willing to become weak in order to become strong, that we stop living in the grip of fear, that we stop living in the grip of shame, that we stop living in the grip of boredom and hopelessness and all of those things. It's when we realize that we have life and strength because of God's grace. Only those who know their own weakness, who's willing to acknowledge their own weakness, are able to know God-given inner strength. So perhaps you feel at the end of it all. I don't know what you're facing today. And perhaps you're there because of your own foolishness, like Samson. Or perhaps you're there because of external circumstances. But no matter what the cause is, this isn't the end. There's another moment in the Bible when it seems like the end. It is this moment when Jesus, the Messiah that was prophesied about and expected for thousands of years, is hanging on a cross. And people spit on Him, and they beat Him, and they drove nails through His hands. And it seems for a moment, like He's been crushed by His enemies. But Jesus wasn't crushed. He overcame Satan. He overcame death. And when He was resurrected, everything changed. See, we're not putting our hope in Jesus simply because we read about Him in a book. We're putting our hope in Jesus because He was resurrected. And it is an event that has been historically captured for us. And after 2,000 years, people still follow that Jesus because He still rules. He still strengthens. He still fills with hope. He still turns endings into new beginnings. And a third or more of the people across the world is putting the hope in Him because they know that when we have our hope in Him, He will never disappoint. And just as this act of Samson brought complete separation and alienation between these two cultures so that the Israelites wouldn't have to live under their power, so Jesus saved us on that cross so that we do not need to live under the power of our culture or the power of our sin or the power of the enemy, the Satan. He set us free from it. And I was like, how can that be? How can one man save everyone? God showed it already through Samson, just a normal man. He didn't need the thousands of the previous judges or the hundreds with Gideon. He needed one man filled with the Spirit of God to save the Israelites. And one man, but a special man, the Son of God, died so that all people of all time could have eternal life. That one man, Jesus, Son of God, was enough. So what feels like the end of your story today might just be the place where God starts something new. Because with God, failure, endings, messes is never final. With God, endings are rewritten as new beginnings. And even if you got yourself there today, if you're like, Louis, man, I've worked myself into a hole. Maybe it's because of addiction. Maybe it's because of shame or repeated failure. Now, what Samson's story reminds me of, that God still meets us there. So I want us to just close our eyes today together and to respond in this moment. And we don't close our eyes because it's something mystical or weird. We simply close our eyes to keep our focus on Jesus and not be distracted by anything else. But I want us to take a moment and just be honest with ourselves. Perhaps you feel today like you've reached an ending. Something that didn't work out. Perhaps you've reached the ending with something dear to you that broke. Perhaps you reached the end because something that you thought was small and innocent has gone further than it should have, and now you don't see a way out. Perhaps today you're here and you're wondering, is this it for me? The invitation is simple. Surrender your ending to God and trust Him with a new beginning. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to have all the answers. Just come to Him. So right where you are today, eyes closed, maybe you just put your hands on your laps in a posture of receiving. And pray today, God, I give this mess, this ending to you. Confess that you cannot carry it anymore, that you're not strong enough, that you don't see a way out. And then say, God, I trust you with whatever is next. I'm going to give us just a moment to do that now. Jesus, thank you that you are a God who pursues our hearts. A God that doesn't push us away when we're at our lowest moments. God that doesn't leave us in our shame. But a God who picks us up. God who fills us with hope and new life. And I want to pray for every person in this room today, everyone watching online, who's feeling like they've reached the end. Every person who doesn't see a way out. God, for them and for myself, we confess today that we've reached the end. We cannot carry this on our own any longer. We need you to do something that we cannot do. We need the peace of God that transcends our logic and our understanding. We need hope that shines like a bright light in the darkness. I pray, God, and I trust you with everything that we carry. And we trust you with our futures. May you turn endings into beautiful new beginnings. And ultimately, may we see your glory through it all. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. God brings new beginnings. Remember that. Not because you get it all right. not because you have all the answers or all the plans, but ultimately simply because He's faithful. And that's my prayer, that you will experience that in your life as you surrender more and more to Jesus.